review up to, I think we looked at least 20, maybe 22 different locations around town. And there's a variety of reasons why they were whittled down as being unacceptable. And we've gotten down to more or less 4. If you look on your table, there should be a ballot. Some might consider this the preliminary ballot. Some of us might consider this the final ballot. The idea is based on a few more facts that I'm going to show you. We would like to see if we can narrow it down further between here, coming back here, the Doubletree, the Elks Lodge, the Shrine Center, which we visited a few weeks ago, and the Martinelli Center, which we've gone to the last couple times. Next slide.
Let me clarify that voting will be next week.
Why?
Final vote.
Okay, so this is preliminary. I think what we're trying to do. Yeah, what we're trying to do is make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask questions. And in this format, maybe we'll do it for 5 minutes, is ask a few questions. But I think there's a lot of people who would like to ask some offline questions about why, where, why did we decide this kind of thing. And so if we at least get a preliminary, good solid preliminary vote, it may be unanimous in one direction or the other. It may be sort of a tie between a few. And then that'll lead to a runoff. Next slide. This all started when the Doubletree decided basically to change their rates. And this all occurred before we had the discussion and had the board make a dues increase of $120 a year. We used to be paying $18 and $12 for non-eaters here. As a result of the Doubletree raising their rate about 23%, it appears as though we would have to be charging about $22 and $16 to more or less break even here. Okay, now that's before we had the dues increase. And the purpose of the dues increase was to some extent, artificially lower this cost by distributing the facility cost across essentially all of the members. So the next slide, and really, this is a little complicated, but bear with me. This is now after the dues increase. So we've now raised the dues, and that helps pay for the cost of the, you might say, the fixed costs of the facility. So we used to be paying a total invoice price based on 85 people eating and 15 people having snacks. Here, it used to cost us $1,623 a week, and you can multiply it out times 50 weeks. The new number is $19.90 or thereabouts. We actually just got a little document from the Doubletree today, and it's a little bit less than that. The Elks Lodge is about $1,730. The Shrine, $1,562, and the Martinelli, $1,623. And in fact, you'll notice this $1,623 matches that one. That's because more or less the Doubletree, that old number, was presented to the Martinelli, and they said, we'll match it. Okay? Now, part of your internal mental process is there's a lot of other parameters. You know, we've been going here for 29 years or something like that, and a lot of people like this place. And it is kind of nice and cozy. I'm sorry?
It's the place and the location.
Yeah, it's the place and the location that we have been going to for many years. And if you're willing to pay more, if you're willing to pay that extra 23%, we would probably have to, a just break-even number is about $19 here as opposed to 15, 15, and 16 at other locations. And it's likely, since there's a decimal point and a few cents on there, it's more likely that we'd be charging 20 and 10.
Is that with the dues increase?
It's with the dues increase. So these are the numbers you might say you would want to associate with the 4 choices. This is now and forevermore going to be more expensive. Today, we're still charging 15 because we basically can still do that. This went up a little bit. I actually just talked to the manager at the Elks Lodge. We actually have kind of a firm bid from them. The Shrine Center, Interestingly, it's surprising when you go to visit these locations and ask them what do they charge. It's surprising how they'll pull out a cost sheet, and then you actually start comparing and chatting with them. It's remarkable how much they'll lower their price when they hear, particularly when they hear 50 times a year. You know, it isn't as though it's a wedding, it's a one-time event. So, for example, the Shrine Center went from $1,100 for the rental of the facility down to $500 because we were going to do it repeatedly. So that put them into a category where they're very cost competitive with the other facilities. John Shirley?
How long are these contracts for a year or what? These prices for a year?
We don't actually have a written contract for any of them. They could be 6 months, they could be a year. You know, nominally they'd be at least a year.
Count on a year then if these prices?
Yeah, I think all of them would be willing to stick to these kind of numbers for at least for a year event.
I have a question about the numbers and the break even. If, I had seen something else that said the DoubleTree doesn't have a separate charge for the room.
Uh-huh.
So is that $19 like the full cost and
Yeah.
$16?
This is the invoice price, so it's the bottom line.
The $16, that includes the facility
Yeah,
cost?
everything. Right. If we multiply this times 85 and this times 15 people, and then add in the about $330 a week that we get because of the dues increase, then that pays that bill. Okay? So it's a balancing act between what you pay in and then what we have to pay the hotel.
Okay, but I guess my question, Herb, is $16 the cost of the lunch or the cost of the lunch plus the cost of the facility, or is it?
And the microphone, and the use of the building, and,
$16 a person for the.
right, yeah. That's all inclusive.
Saving on 250. 11 versus 13.
The apostrophe from Elks. Oh, really? It's not an apostrophe, it's not the Elks, they own it, lodge? It's the plural Elks Lodge. Okay, good. We will fix that, thank you.
Details. So just to clarify,
Yep.
some of this money goes to the treasury?
There won't be any deductions for the treasurer.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, you're calling this break even, but in this amount of money, does a certain amount go to our treasury to fund the club activities?
No. The break even really means that, and that's, we have to take that amount in. That was a small distinction between 19 and 20. This 75 cents, you might say, profit on going up to 20, but it's a much easier number to collect because you just pull out a $20 bill and all that kind of thing.
Herb,
Yes?
the caterers that you used, that we used at the 3 other locations.
Uh-huh.
Was it always the same caterer, or was it always a different caterer?
Elks Lodge has their own caterer. Obviously, DoubleTree has, you know, the caterer that's here. The Shrine Center is the only one that we would have an optional caterer. And the Martinelli, what we call Martinelli is the center, which is owned by the county, but they are managed by Garay Winery. And so the food service comes from Garay, and there's no other choice.
Kimberly has a question.
So I actually, 2 questions. So with the DoubleTree, I know that they store all of this stuff that we have, and it's probably really easy.
The back room here, yeah.
Yeah, for the people that have to set up the meeting. So my first question is, do all of the other locations offer that amenity? And then my other question is, at the DoubleTree, we always have a variety of meals. So for today, I didn't particularly feel like Mexican, so I was able to make a sandwich and have salad or fruit.
Yeah.
I'm not noticing that with any of the other places that we went, and so there was sometimes that there was a meal choice that I wasn't particularly fond of, and I was going to have lunch and decided not to. So again, if we're going to go to a different facility, I would want to see that there's multiple meal choices, and I'm thinking that that's not reflected in the pricing. So if you could respond to that.
Yeah. Okay. Part A. This is kind of like the apples and oranges and chili pepper comparison. You know, it's unfortunately in terms of storage, the Shrine Center is the only place so far that has not figured out a place to allow us to store something. The Elks Lodge says they have a shed that's attached to the building that you can put stuff in. The Doubletree is a Doubletree. And Martinelli's has voluntarily given us the manager's office to put our stuff into. So it's only the Elks Lodge that doesn't handle storage. The food is a little more complicated because, and Sheila can maybe comment on it, because we don't have contracts yet with these companies, so we don't actually have something in writing.
Well, initially, when we started this discussion back in April, I was under the impression that we needed to streamline our food to be able to save money, meaning single choice for our entree, salad, etc. So with that said, we put together our little criteria and went to all these other places with that menu choice. So basically, the other ones' menus are what we've had so far, based on what I told them. And because that was my understanding that we were gonna have to go that way here. Now, if we do want more choices, it is gonna cost us more to stay here, but at the other places, they can, we have not asked them, gee, if we gave you the additional monies, could we have more choices? So they've not been asked. They were told to just give us a singular, you know, the entree, vegetable, starch, salad, roll, dessert, coffee, tea, ice. You know, that's what they've been told to do. So unfortunately, it's not apples to apples now because
the Doubletree, is that including what they currently provide, which is several options? Because
yeah,
then
that's
you're not
including,
comparing
right,
correct
because,
numbers.
pardon?
You're not comparing fair scenarios to the Doubletree.
Exactly, but
It's like buying a house. You know, it's like buying a house, which Moni Knopf can comment on. You know, they're not all the same.
Yeah, and this, unfortunately, I wasn't aware of this until yesterday.
Yeah.
So I apologize. That's why I was thinking maybe this wouldn't be a good day to discuss it, because now it's changed. Because I was still under the impression, as of last April, this last April when we spoke, that our menu, to be able to save money, would have to shrink and be more, you know, health conscious, singular choices. So that's the, I guess, what would you call it? The idea that I went out with when we went to solicit it for, yeah, exactly. So that puts the other three at a disadvantage.
Please, please mark your ballots. I know this is a short campaign speech, but please mark your ballots, and we'll take this.
Why
mark the ballot?
Because it's a preliminary ballot.
I have a question.
And Ralph said here that he would like to have another vote next week.
I have a question.
Yeah, one more question.
The other question has to do with the cost of the meal. I thought one of the reasons that spurred this on was that the Doubletree was going to raise its price up to about $25 or $26, or originally when we first started this. And one of the discussions that we did have was if we have less to choose from, would the price go down?
Mm-hmm.
And then we went into this, and so I guess the question is, so I remember that discussion.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, unfortunately, yeah, Nancy, you're right. That's what started all this. So that's why I'm kind of apologizing to everyone, because until yesterday, I thought it was still that, less choices. So now they're proposing, which is great, you know, that we have these multiple choices. It's more money, but the other three locations have not been given that opportunity.
How much is the dues increase? We have to go. Yeah. We got a program. How much is the dues increase lowering?
Okay, we're going to have to end our questioning here. And it was really a time just to get out more information to everyone, and we feel that we're going to have to let you think about it for another week and take care of it then.
So we vote?
Deborah? Yeah, we will collect the votes.
If you didn't stop there.
trying to have progressive meetings that have progress and make thoughtful decisions about various things throughout the year. And this room is very conducive to that. And I found personally, in the other rooms, there's a lot of din, separated. And so I just think that the atmosphere here is critical to some of the work that we're doing.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the hopper. It's already done. TJ.
May I say again, location. You know, if I want to bring somebody here, I say go to the DoubleTree, and it's very easy to tell them where it is. And when they get here, this is our place. It's not the Elks' place, it's not the Shriners' place, this is our place. So,
But we got to dig deeper in our pockets to stay here. Okay, we've got to get going with our program, and you've got another week to think about this, okay?
Okay, Rotarians and guests, we've been asked to present a program on some of the early history of this club. John Tarberi and Don Nolde and I are old-time members, and Phil Dean prepared a wonderful history that's on our website. So he's involved, and he's the only guy that knows how to do a PowerPoint and run that darn computer. So Phil, we're going to start off by talking about Rotary in Livermore starting in 1939.
The first attempt to form a Rotary Club here was in 1939. It went so far as to do what's called an extension survey. And this was sponsored by the clubs in Niles and Hayward. And this is the letter talking about the extension survey. And this is the survey which showed who would be sort of the sponsors of this thing. Richard Callahan, you may recognize some of these names. Douglas Easley, George Tuttle, Joe Concannon, and Dr. Hector, who was a dentist. This actually failed because Dr. Mack, who was the primary driver in founding this club, was ill and was unable to continue with it, and there being also a Lions Club, very active one in Livermore, this effort was dropped. In 1942, there was another effort made because the people, especially in Hayward and Niles, really thought there ought to be a club here in this valley. So they tried again, and this is another survey done for 1942. And it failed for the same reason, but also you'll notice it's in the middle of the war, so this effort failed. The next try was in 1947 with E.R. Miller being the president, D.G. Harper, the vice president, secretary-treasurer W.L. Burr. And the list of the members of the board of directors were Burns, Burr, Harper, Miller, Moses, and Roberts. So this is 1947. A provisional Rotary Club of Livermore was then recognized on the 6th of February, 1947. And here is the certificate. This came directly from Rotary International, certified at the Rotary Club of Livermore, California. It was club number 6509. You can see the numbering systems have changed somewhat. This also was district number 105. These are the charter members, all of them. The one in the upper left-hand corner was Harold Kemp. He was the last living member of the original charter. Actually, he was still in the club when I joined it. There was a project, the first project happened the same year of the formation. This was just after the war, and the club members gathered 11,500 pounds of food and put it on a friendship train to Europe. They had also collected $405 in cash. So that's the first project of this club, 1947.
Wait, before you go on, you know, the meeting places, guys, it's interesting, we're talking about meeting today, but let me tell you a few of the places this club has met. It started out at Mario's on First Street, and then it went to the Travelers Hotel, and after that, for a short period, then they moved upstairs to a building known as the Town Hall on First Street. And then I decided to move back to Travelers Hotel, and that's where Kentucky Fried Chicken was. They just stopped. There was a hotel there. And then in 1950, with 30 members, we moved to the banquet room of the Golden Rule Creamery. It was a room that was alongside the main part. That's where Riata Restaurant is now. And that's where it was when I joined. There was room in there for about 35 or 40 members. That same year, an announcement was made that the Livermore Herald established, that was the year that the laboratory started. And so the result of the growth, we stayed there at the Golden Rule for a while, but then we had to find another place, and we went to Mountain Mike's Pizza, and in the early 60s, and the club met at the Eagles Hall for about 5 years. Then about a year later, the Lucky Lanes, the Granada Bowl, and then the Rancher, and we were in the Rancher from 68 to 84, and then to this location in 1984.
This, another early project, this was 1965, 66. It's the corner of South Livermore and 5th Street. There turned out to be a small triangular space here. And the club was going to put up sort of a small park there, and this is the park under construction. You might remember this park because once it was finished, a truck came by and demolished it. And the club rebuilt it. And most recently, I think like a year or so ago, they repainted it. This club went in and repainted it.
Phil, when did that first go up? What year was that?
1966.
The people who were responsible for putting this back together again were behind them was our president and also Steve Neff did the planning of it, put it together. We used Michael Ferrucci's front yard to storing our lumber across the
The first really big project was 1974, and it actually went on for 11 years. Completed in 1985. And those of you who aren't aware of it, when you go out to the Robertson Park Arena, at the big, you see all these high lights around that thing. All those lights were put in by this club. It's over $50,000 this club raised to do that.
What is today's money? Is it 10 times that much? In today's money, it'd be about 10 times as much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me comment on that, Phil. A lot of the money for that lighting project was raised by two concerts we had here in Livermore in 1977 and 78. The 77 concert was Mel Tillis. And we went out ahead of time and we sold tickets for this concert, and most of the clubs within 30 or 40 miles here, we sold tickets. It was a big success. We made, I think, around $5,000. Well, the next year we thought we would try it again with Tammy Wynette. But we didn't go out and pre-sell tickets. And then the weather was horrible. It was cold, cloudy, and windy, and a lot of people didn't show up. So we raised $5,000. I don't know how much we lost on the second one. It was about $1,500 in the other direction, so that didn't work out too well. But anyway, it was a net profit that benefited the lighting project.
Another project was the Cherokee House renovation. The club, for $99,000, bought a house, decided to renovate it and sell it to make a lot of money. It was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home with an in-ground swimming pool. 80 club members promised to work at least 8 hours each, so this was a major project for the club in those days. Here's the crew. You look carefully, they all seem to have a can in their hands, which I guess is typical.
For donations.
Right. There's the roof being redone. They're putting the sod in the front yard. There's the house. That's what it ended up looking like.
Yeah, that was a good profit on that. Maybe 15 years before that, when Barry Schrader was president, we also bought a house and remodeled it and spent a lot of time and work. We only made about $15,000 on that one. And to make $40,000 on this one was quite an improvement. And that's a long time ago. So $40,000 then would be a lot of money in today's money.
This is a group in the kitchen, I guess, celebrating being through, being completed. Next thing we wanted to talk about was women in Rotary.
Well, let me start about that. You know, in 1987, the Club of Downey had 2 women in their club, and they were there several years, 3 or 4 years, or at least a couple of years. I'm not sure exactly how long. But they used their initials, and they never used their first names. So Rotary International never realized that they were women. But one of them, an African-American lady, was elected president. And of course, that became known to Rotary International. So they said, no women allowed, and if you don't resign, you'll have to end your club. So I'm not quite sure I know they didn't resign. I just think they went straight to the courts. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And their U.S. Supreme Court said, women, this is a networking group, and women deserve to be, should be in it. So that's when it was. So in 1987, they started allowing women in Rotary. And the first 4 women in our club, I don't remember their name, but Sue Gallinger here, she was one of the 4. And of course, as I tell everybody, the best thing that ever happened to Rotary was when they let women come in.
Now, when this was in the courts, Barry Schrader actually proposed to this club that women be allowed into the club. But the club held a vote and decided 49 to 27 to not take a stand on the issue. Some of the other clubs in the area did, and I think even San Francisco. But it was in the court, so a decision was waiting to find out whether or not what Rotary International was doing was legal. Duarte Club sued Rotary International because Rotary kicked them out for admitting women. They actually revoked their charter. On the 4th of May, the Supreme Court ruled that they cannot exclude members based on gender, and so that same year, Rotary changed its policy and allowed women in. 4 women were inducted in 1987, Marilyn Carter, B.J. Sibley, Sue Gallinger, and Joy Medijan, and I know many of you remember all of these women. Today there are 200,000 women in Rotary, 91 women governors, and 31 women members of this club.
Was the Duarte Club reinstated?
The Duarte Club was reinstated.
Before we go on, seeing those numbers, that vote reminds me of another thing. Our club started, those 19 men started Rotary in the Valley. Now there are over 400 wonderful Rotarians working for the good of this valley. But the first club we chartered in about 65, I think, was the Pleasanton Club, and then they chartered Pleasanton North. And in the early 60s, we went to the Dublin Club, or early 70s, I'm not quite sure which. And then in 85, we started the Morning Club, and that's where we had another vote. And we wanted to vote to see whether we wanted a second club in Livermore. And guess what that vote was? 46 to have a second club, 42 not to. They were, I guess the people that didn't want to do it felt that it would compete for new members. But of course we did it, and it's been a wonderful thing. The 2 clubs have worked together. And so then all those clubs put together the Valley Club. So there are 6 clubs in the Valley now, where there had only been 1 in 1947.
What year was the Morning Club?
The Morning Club was 85. We had a 50th anniversary a few years ago, and these are some pictures from that anniversary.
We have quite a few, and we've indicated some people that you might know who were at the party.
You might know Dr. Plone.
You recognize?
Joe Sladkey, Art Henry, editor of the paper, Bob Becker, quite an administrator at the lab. These are all Rotarians. Earl Doherty, a longtime banker, and Fred Wagner Jr. His father was the 3rd president and a charter member. Ed Runstrom, a school superintendent, and I think he joined the club 4 months after it chartered. Ed and Sue Coates, or someplace, they're right there. Yeah, you can. Yeah, he doesn't look any different now, just as young as then. Now, here's some people, the 50th anniversary celebration.
Had a hard
On the-
time
on the-
identifying the one with the mustache.
You know, on this celebration, we had three events. We actually had a dinner in the, you know, it was chartered, the place, this club was chartered in the Oddfellow, no, not the Oddfellow, the Foresters Hall upstairs. So on the 50th anniversary, we had our meeting up there. And of course, that's where all these people you saw their pictures were. And it was quite a nice event. Then we had a big dinner dance at Castlewood. And we had Carol Jean and her girls perform. And then Danny Sackow perform. And they both, those two groups had performed 50 years before on the charter night of this club. And they were still in business. And Danny's still alive and Carol Jean is too. But she no longer has her studio.
Anybody